Hi everyone, welcome back to the Body of Knowledge course. I'm Andrew Gibbons. This is part 3, and in parts 1 and 2 we looked at some simple bending studies, bending forward, bending to the side, to be able to make our spine more distributed in the shape and to learn how to actually sense the way that the activity can be more evenly distributed throughout the spine, throughout our support. And in today's lesson, we're actually going to combine those two planes. We're actually going to combine the side bending aspects that we did in the first lesson with the forward rounding that we did in the second episode, and we're going to put them together. Because as you'll see, your spine is an amazing system. It's really meant to combine movement in all three planes at the same time. And today's lesson will help you study that particular feature of your spine. Okay? So let's return to this idea where you place the hand on the top of your head. You can take your other hand and put it simply on your leg. And just reintroduce yourself to this notion of bending the head a little bit down so that the ear moves towards the shoulder a little bit. But again, reacquaint yourself with this notion of distributing the action throughout the entire spine. And if you remember, the one principle that we talked about to focus on is to create the movement with a sense of lengthening up through your spine as you do it, rather than compressing, shortening the body. Instead, getting longer, getting taller. Yeah? You'll also remember that one of the other features we looked at was the way in which the organization of the pelvis had to be timed with the movement of the head to create that. Yeah? You can try this with the hand on top of the head going one way and going the other. It's a different experience to fold on the side that has the arm up high over the head. And of course, you can switch and feel what it's like on this particular day to have the other arm on top of your head. And for the moment, since these are just short introductory lessons, we're not going to get too deep into the details. Just acquaint yourself with how you're doing today. Yeah? Notice how your knees stand over the feet. Very often, you may notice as you enter the practice, you may find that one leg tends to hang off to the side more, or one leg is turned in a little bit more. See if you can even things up just a little bit. Just place your feet as squarely as you can underneath the knees. And just reacquaint yourself with this bending idea. Good. And then take a rest. And then turn yourself. I'm just going to turn for the camera, but you don't have to turn to do this. Reacquaint yourself with bending forward, rounding the spine. And again, use 5 or 6 repetitions so that you can make the movement each time with a sense of being able to lengthen the spine into the shape of rounding, as opposed to just compressing yourself, just falling into yourself. You want to make the distinction. Rounding, getting a little longer, feeling the bottom and the top almost coming forward while the middle of the spine moves backwards. Yeah. And of course, you can try this a little bit in the other direction. Yeah. So now that you've reacquainted yourself, now we're going to put those two things together. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to use a couple of different introductory strategies. One is we're going to turn the center line of the body a little bit more towards one knee. So now I'm angled a little bit more towards the right knee. And I can practice rounding myself on this particular line. Now, one of the interesting things that you'll start to notice is that the rounding shape now no longer takes place on this right through the center. But there's actually a way in which when I'm over here, because my spine is turned a little bit this way, and my pelvis might have to be turned a little bit towards this leg than the other, that the rounding occurs in such a way that the part of my back that gets longer than the other is over on this side. Because I'm rounding a little bit over in this direction, I may actually feel that the shortening is now not so much along the side or purely along the front, but it's like a stripe painted right from the tip of my shoulder down into my hip joint here, and it has a slightly different direction that it shortens in. And you can come over here. You'll notice I'm taking my right hand and putting it on my right knee and placing the left hand on top of it. That's just to help turn the whole torso a little bit in this direction. And again, as you start to make the rounding movement here, there's no particular speed or quantity of movement that you're looking to achieve. What you're looking for is the speed at which you can learn, the speed at which you can actually distinguish how is it different for me on this side. Does this side of my chest have the capacity to round much easier, or is it slightly more of a challenge? What about this side of my back? Does this side of my back more readily lengthen into the movement? Or is it slightly restricted? Yeah? Now you have this idea of rounding down this axis, rounding over on this axis, and rounding a little bit more on this axis. Take a moment to notice how your spine is starting to take shape in your image as you're sitting. And now, begin by turning again towards the right knee, the left hand on top of the right knee, the right hand on top of the left hand. And now, begin to round down in this direction. And then slowly take your hands off and watch as you turn while you're rounded towards the other knee. And start to come up over the other knee. Yeah? Again, notice how slowly and smoothly you're willing to do this movement. There really is no reward for a kind of ballistic or gymnastic approach to what you're doing here. In fact, one of the lovely rewards you might discover is that your breath can be continuous and safe and comfortable throughout the entire experience. Also, by going slowly, you can begin to notice certain details that are usually hidden under your experience. Yeah. See if you're starting to feel a little bit more even on both sides now, having done this sort of alternating variation. See what it's like now to round yourself forward here, and just notice along the two sides of the spine now, has the timing become a little bit more simple, a little bit more symmetrical, a little bit more even. Yeah? Now let's try another variation. This time we'll keep both hands on the knees, and as you round down pretty much directly through the middle with your head between each of the knees, and then slowly turn yourself towards one of your knees and start to come up. As you're coming up, as you get to your tallest point, arrive at the middle, but continue turning as if to address the other knee, and then start to round as you come to be directed towards the other knee. As you're rounding down, you come back through the middle. You come back through the middle at your most rounded. You turn towards the other knee. You start to come up towards the other knee. As you lengthen, you come back through the middle. And so gradually, it's as if you're drawing a circle in the air with the top of your head. I'll speed up just so that if you would like a visual reference, you can see what this looks like. The important thing is not the size of the circle or the speed of the circle. The important thing is really this sense of the timing between the top and the bottom and the middle of the spine, so that you really don't feel that you're trying to just move your head in a circle or you're just trying to contort your back in a circle, but it's really something that's connected all the way down into the chair, all the way down into the stool. I'll do a much smaller version. You can even see between my elbows occasionally the white space of the screen behind me open up. I know I'm wearing black today, so it might be a little bit harder to see the details in my clothing, the folding in my clothing. Yeah? Good. Take another rest. Again, if you want to, when you rest, you can just check in and return to some of these reference movements, these things that we did on day 1 and day 2. And just notice, again, not how far you can go now, but just notice the simplicity with which the shape can be organized. Yeah? Notice how pleasant it is to make some of these shapes with your back. Yeah? And for our last variation, we'll do something that we did in the very first lesson, which is, again, we'll sit so that only one side of the pelvis, only one buttock is on the chair or on the stool. And again, if you want to, you can take a book. If you'd like a less adventurous variation, you can just take a book, put the book on the chair so that it's only one buttock is sitting on the book, and then you won't be hanging out over the edge of the chair so much. It'll feel a little less precarious. That's also perfectly fine to do. But we'll sit with that asymmetry of support. And now, take one hand, place it over the top of your head, start to side bend. You'll lower the side of the pelvis that's out over the chair. And again, reacquaint yourself with what it's like to have the ribs on one side folding slowly together, your armpit moving closer down to your pelvis and your waist. Yeah. You can also go a little bit in the other direction, so you actually lift this side of the pelvis higher than the chair. Again, this idea of lengthening as you do it has something to do with your own internal sense, your kinesthetic sense of the space inside your body. So when I lengthen, I try to actually, even though I'm adopting the rounded shape, the curved shape, the side bent shape, I'm trying to maintain a certain kind of space, a certain amount of space in my body. And when I compress, when I do it poorly by just, I can actually feel this shrinking, this contraction of space inside myself. And so you have to just build that image in the way that you do it with yourself each time. Yeah? Now, to reintroduce this idea of this kind of circling path, you can begin to lower one side of the pelvis. And now, as you get to your lowest point, start to bring it forward and start to bring your head forward. And then as you lift the pelvis, bring the head over. Now the ear and this side of the pelvis are closest together. The armpit and the hip are closest together. Then they can both go back, and as they go back, they start to get farther apart. As they get farther apart, they start to come forward again. And the movement you're making, at least the movement you're making with the pelvis, you can think of it like what do they call that on the side of a train? If you've ever seen Buster Keaton films where he's riding on the, what's that called, on the train wheel? I forget what it's called. It's the horizontal piece that connects the train wheels. but this kind of circular action. But again, the important thing is to distribute it all the way up so that the movements of the head, the movements of your chest, actually they facilitate the movement of the pelvis. They actually make the pelvis easier to go through these particular curved directions in space. And of course, you can reverse the direction. And you'll get a little lost. And what do you do when you get lost? Well, one of the best things to do is simply pause and see if you can reverse through that direction. There's no need to just robotically continue doing what you're doing. You can find a certain segment of the circle that you do easily and then simply expand the nice quality that you have, that nice sense of orientation with yourself. You can gradually expand and spread that through the rest of the movements of the circle. Great. When your arm gets tired, just make sure you rest. Come back. You've had one side off the edge of the chair. You've had the other side where this side of the pelvis has been supported by the chair or the book. Just notice how that's affecting your sense of the length of the spine. And return to this idea here with both hands on the knees of circling your head here. And notice what part of the circling has become smoother. Is it as you're lifting up? Or is the smoothness appearing as you start to go down? Improvement can happen in lots of different aspects. There could be an improvement that you notice in the timing of the pelvis and the head. Yeah, the places where the circle becomes difficult, very often in those precise places where the movement gets restricted or thick, is exactly the place where the timing between the pelvis and the head suddenly becomes off. Yeah, it's as if you lose the ability to coordinate, to move the two ends at the same time. Yeah? So that's something to look for, is that the places where it gets easy has something to do with the cooperation between the top and the bottom. Yeah? Beautiful. And if you like, you can simply go to the other side. Whoops, I've done it on the same side. You go to the other side, place the pelvis on the chair so that only one sit bone is supported, or put the book on the other side of the pelvis. Again, you can also play with variations as to which hand you have on top of your head. I recommend trying both, but for the sake of time, I'll just do this one. And again, listen to the places in your body where you feel like the space is quite thick. It's almost as if there's a chunky quality. This morning, I feel over here, this is not articulating terribly well. So what do? Do I just force it? No, I take my time. I try to talk to a little bit. I try to picture how the 6 or 7 ribs way up along in there in my armpit and my chest might fold almost like a fan. They might fold with a little more ease, a little more grace. So you can work imagistically like this. It also may have something to do with where I've placed my foot. Maybe I'd like my foot further out or further in. Maybe I just really need, for whatever reasons in my particular life, in my body, I need this leg to be further out to the side. That provides such a different sense of stability. And then I notice, with that little change, what do I notice here? Well, it got a little bit easier. I don't know that I feel like I'm lengthening better, but it got a little easier for me to bend. With the leg closer, I have to really be more specific. And now I start to enter into this circling idea. You'll notice I'm not even completing the circle now. I'm just letting my own curiosity lead me through. I know what I'm doing. I know I'm headed towards making a circle. I'm just not in any rush. And even though I'm not in a rush, it's very interesting. I notice where I rush. Because having the intention to do the movement with a certain quality does not guarantee that quality. There has to be some way in which I'm willing to observe the disparity between what I think I'm doing, what I'm intending to do, and what's actually occurring. Because the difference between those things is where I can really work to improve. Yeah? So now you've had 3 introductory ideas to work with. One was bending to the side, again with this principle of being able to distinguish between lengthening and compressing. We did it with bending forward, again with this idea, the difference between compressing versus actually lengthening the spine, the difference between too much weight falling back behind the base versus being able to actually arc the head forward, the bottom of the pelvis coming a little bit forward so that you're more evenly distributed over the base. Yeah, these are basic ideas that we'll continue to work with. And I'll see you next time on the Body of Knowledge course. I'm Andrew Gibbons. Thank you.